I always judge my hair. Hello everybody, Shaman here, and I'm in Bali. So just Bali, just Bali everywhere. And this is Liv. I first heard about Liv through the Dream Freedom Beauty podcast. Incredible podcast. Everybody should listen to it.
True.
One episode where the sort of like the additional part was you speaking, or the Kontomble speaking through you. So I was like, oh, this lady's legit, you know? And I looked a little bit more what Kontomble are, and it turns out that Liv is a voice diviner. We'll talk more about what that means. I am going to say the first time I heard the Kontomble, see, I was just like, right?
Yeah, a little scary.
A little scary, but at the same time, like, I feel like there's a lot about spirituality where it may not look glossy, it may not look perfect, it may not sound perfect, and there's an authenticity and a rawness about it that kind of scares off modern people.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you weren't always like that. Okay, you first went from becoming, or you were going to become a court stenographer.
I did, yeah.
And now you're doing this. How did that happen?
Well, yeah, because when I did become, well, whatever that means, I did become a court reporter, so I was a court reporter until age 21, and that was society's programming, and that was my parents' programming that was still like very much in my system. I found it like deeply disturbing, you know, things that,
what do you mean?
Things that I was experiencing, well, a lot that I was experiencing. Like, I don't really necessarily agree with hierarchy, and I was realizing that there was, you know, kind of an invisible hierarchy in place where this person is above this person, and it goes so on, and I'm supposed to like find my place in that. It wasn't like outwardly said, but it was pretty obvious, you know? So that didn't feel good. And it also didn't feel good, things that I was like hearing off the record. And so I was inside of the so-called judicial or justice system, and I was seeing that basically it was like full of lies, you know? And they would say things to me or in front of me that was off the record. And so I was just putting a lot of pieces together, and I found it all like really deeply disturbing. And also I realized that I was doing this thing that was where I was making more money than I had definitely ever made before. Court reporters make a lot of money. And because it wasn't true to my soul, it was really hard to do, you know? And so I realized that I was trying to compensate by like shopping a lot, you know, and like buying a lot of shoes and doing these things, you know, because I was trying to fill a void inside. So basically I realized like it was kind of intense. It was like, if this is what life is about, like, I'm not interested. It wasn't like I was, you know, feeling like committing suicide or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it was really, really like going against my internal system. I was in touch with myself enough to feel that much, you know? And for whatever reason, I felt really called to the San Francisco Bay Area, you know? And so I just got the courage up to do that. And then once I did that, then I just basically decided, like, I've already tried living somebody else's life, and that doesn't work. And so what is it like to live my own life and my own truth? And so I basically just committed to following my heart and listening in that way. And so it was one step led to the next, led to the next, led to the next. And then I got guided, you know, into healing work at first. And then I kept following my intuition, and then I realized that was the voice of spirit, and it just kept, you know, getting guided towards the like psychic spiritual side of things without even naming it as such. And then I just kept going with these like trainings or these things that I was doing, and I put a message out to the universe and asking what's my next step. And then it was very clear message. It was like 3 books or a book or a person came through. There was a flyer. It was, all of it had the word shaman on it, you know, shamanism. But I didn't know what shamanism was, but I did know that the message was really clear, you know? So I started this training with a woman, and I just like, all of it felt really natural, you know? And then towards the end of that training, I just wanted to keep going. I knew that I would give my life to it, or I would commit my life to it. It was really clear for me, like, this is it, you know, like I was getting closer to the heart of it. And then she wasn't taking people any further, but she had a list of books, and then there was one, for no reason in particular, when I heard it, Malidoma, Somé, Water and the Spirit, that these were all books of, like, written by, as she said, shamans. You know, I know that word is, like, loaded for people, but anyway, that's the way she said it, from different cultures, and for whatever reason, it wasn't at that point that I was particularly drawn to Africa, but when I heard that book title, I knew that's the one. I wasn't interested in any other one, but I forgot to get that book, and then I was living in Berkeley by that point, and then this guy, Laurence, that I'm friends with, he came to stop by. He was in town from France, and then he and I went for a walk to my friend Ajua's house, and when we were walking, he started randomly talking about this book. That was like, I mean, this is a little bit obscure, right? You know,
massively obscure,
right?
probably.
And so I was like, oh, thanks for reminding me. I was going to get this book. And he said, oh, you probably could borrow it from Ajua. She found it on the street, you know? And I was like,
Coincidence.
chills right now. Anyway, still. And so obviously I borrowed it from her, and I just like tore through it, and I was like, who is he, or where is he? Like, that's my teacher. You know, it's just a really strong knowing. And then, and nothing makes sense about it. Like, if we're just looking, you know, skin deep, obviously I express as a person in like lighter skin or whatever, but it doesn't make sense if you're approaching things, you know, at face value, right? And yet our souls, you know, our souls know things, and our spirits know things, you know? And so anyway, so I started working with Malidoma, and he is like legit for sure. Malidoma is super legit. But anyway, and then when I started studying with him, it just was like this remembering, you know, started remembering catalyzed or ignited, and it just kept going, and it kept going. And then I would go to Burkina, and then I would remember it, you know, and it was frustrating to me that I couldn't remember all of it so fast, but I knew it, you know, and it wasn't like the way some people, you know, maybe are in Egypt and they remember, oh, they've been in Egypt before, so it's like reminiscent of a past life, and you're just kind of ruminating on a past life. It wasn't that. It was like, it was set up, designed just in that way, that I was supposed to remember in such a way that it's very much like the central aspect of my life. You know what I mean? Not like you're ruminating on a past life. And so these rememberings were ignited and happening when I would go to Burkina, and then over the years...
And Burkina is an area in Africa, right?
I know, some people don't know her. Sorry. For those who don't know, a lot of people don't know, right? Okay, Burkina Faso is in West Africa. It's a country in West Africa. And so as that was happening in Malidoma, after the training ended, he would ask me to come back and assist and so on. Like, he was seeing things and knowing things about me that I didn't know. And I was, you know, really shy and introverted and just like kind of trying to find my way, you know, like speaking in a group was the hardest thing for me. Over the years, no matter, like 5 times visiting Burkina and then going through these initiations and so on, no matter which village that I would go to, I would sit with the diviners, and they would always recognize me as a Kontomble person, you know, because they're able to see. And what does that mean? It means like, well, for sure it means I come from that world, their world, and then Kontomble is their name for the little people, you know, which there's names for the little people all over, like we were talking about before, which they might be the leprechauns of Ireland, or they'd be the Menehune of Hawaii, or they'd be, you know, the elves or the Buddha folk of Iceland, and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on.
It's so interesting that you use the word remembering, because I think a lot of people, they're in the situation you were when you were the court reporter.
Totally.
So they know they're supposed to be doing something more with their life.
Totally.
But the thing is, how do you know what it is you're supposed to do? Like you said, you followed your heart. Mm-hmm. What does that feel like? What does that sound like? I mean, how did you know that was following your heart and not, let's say, following some other voice or following some other thing of society?
Can you feel your heart?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, but you know what? Like, even though I base my life around spirituality,
Right.
it's very difficult to
Right.
actually hear your heart.
Right.
So how did you do it when you were in the midst of like this Carrie Bradshaw, like everybody thinks from the outside in, yes, I want her lifestyle, you know?
That's funny.
Yeah, how'd you do that?
Well, I guess the way I could explain it is there was a feeling inside of when I was going against my truth or my being, and it actually felt really almost physical or something. Like it got to the point, I mean, I was only a court reporter maybe for a year and a half, I don't even know if for 2 years. And there was a feeling of when I would go into the courtroom that it just felt like, this doesn't feel right, you know? And so I knew what that feeling felt like, and it became, the more I was doing the thing that felt, this doesn't feel right, you know, it actually became really difficult. And I also had this knowing somehow, I had the feeling that if I continue on this path, I'm going to get sick. I just had this internal knowing somehow, I might actually get a disease. You know, somehow I just knew that. And our body has knowing, you know, and it talks to us. And so it just felt like if I kept doing that thing, then it just was getting harder and harder. And I feel people do experience that. It's like,
but they ignore it.
hard.
They go to the doctor.
Yeah.
And the doctor puts them on some, I don't know, like Prozac or something.
Totally. Or maybe just finding a way to get in touch with that. I mean, I guess there's different ways people do that. Maybe they practice yoga or they start practicing meditation or something, some ways that we're able to just, even I think, just tuning into our internal self, even for a moment, will help, you know, get us to that place. And I do feel that we all have that capacity to, even through maybe the haze of the meds, you know, because I do believe a lot of people are on meds, you know, have been prescribed for this, exactly what you've just said. And I do feel even through that haze, it's possible to feel that voice, even if it feels like a little voice. And even, you know, for those listening, if they are curious or wondering, how do I know, then maybe just take a moment to close your eyes and then just feel. If you ask your body, is this the thing for me? What does it feel like, you know? Because I feel we receive those messages all the time, even about the little or the big things, you know, seemingly the little decisions or the big ones. And by now I just try to be really thorough with just that. Even if I don't understand it, a lot of times I don't understand why, but it's okay to not understand why and to trust still. We still can trust and not understand why. A lot of the ways that I've lived my life for the past at least 14 or 15 years don't make sense to a lot of people, or they haven't. And maybe it's just recent that my mom was like, oh, actually, okay, I was wrong. And I was like, will you say that a little louder? What did you say? She's like, don't make me say it. I'm like, no, I am going to. Because you were telling me I'm going to go to hell for years. And so I'm going to ask you to say that again, you know? Just like, let me revel in it for a minute. You know?
I feel
you know
that.
What I mean?
I feel that. Asian parents, right? It's sort of like, you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you failed at life.
Oh, really? Is that what it is?
I think a lot of, especially immigrant parents, they put all of their time, money, investment into their children. So these children are products that need to give return on investment.
Right.
And so if they can't brag to their friends, oh, you know, my kid who went to Harvard Law, right? Hair flip. If they can't say that, and instead they're just like, oh, you know, like my daughter, she just does ayahuasca in the jungle.
Right, totally.
You know, then it's sort of like, oh, you failed as a mother. And so I feel that a lot of, especially Asian mothers, maybe they themselves, they have this feeling. I think my mother had this too, where she knew certain things that would have made for a better life, but she felt society pressuring her to do certain things.
Right.
And I think a lot of women, because we have families, we have, a lot of responsibilities.
Right.
The feeling of, well, I need to go on this path to benefit everybody else. That's hard.
Totally.
So how does a woman who does have the family, the house, people depending on her, how does she do what her heart tells her to do without letting other people down?
That's a good question.
Yeah, please.
Will you ask it one more time?
Sure. So how does a woman who has kids, the house, the car, people depending on her at work, because let's face it, a lot of times women, they have a lot on their shoulders.
Right.
How does she follow what's in her heart for her without everything else falling apart?
Well, maybe by having the conversation with the family and with everybody involved that maybe would be particularly impacted by the decision, explaining the value of possibly following the heart or the importance, It's like, I do feel it's really related to health too. I mean, that's more intuitive that I feel that, it's speaking from my intuition, but following our heart, well, it's good for our hearts. Not following our heart, actually, maybe you'd have a heart attack like my dad did. I mean, and I'm not a person that's guided by science, and you probably could find the evidence for that in science if somebody really wanted to, if they needed that. And it really, I think, can be, and so if you're just simply valuing your health, and that's a reason why, well, that's a good reason.
Right. If you don't have your health, you can't take care of anybody. I think I told this to Lena, how when the oxygen mask comes out of the airplane, you put it on yourself first, then you put it on your kid. When we have an issue that the doctor says, oh, it's in your head or what have you, but you're always tired. Maybe you're either gaining a lot of weight or losing a lot of weight.
Right.
And it's like that mystery illness that I think a lot of women are getting these days. Maybe that's a sign that you're not following your heart.
Totally. I mean, and maybe it would be helpful for people to start to fall in love with and get comfortable with taking risks.
That's hard. It's really hard.
And yeah, I mean, I noticed, like, I can only speak from my own experience, but I noticed the spirits that I work with, they really, really, really ask me to take major risks. A lot. Like, it seems like they keep asking me to, like, level up and level up and level up each time. Like, really? Each time it's kind of like going all in. And when I say going all in, I mean, whether you're looking at that financially or however, they're asking me to go all in, like, throw it all in all the time. But what I've experienced as a result of that is, well, a lot of people, they relate to me as a woman that walks with a lot of courage. And that's because I've been willing to. And before that, maybe even 7 years ago, I would consider myself more like riddled with fears than courage, A lot of fears. A lot of fears. And I've noticed the more just, okay, I'm going to trust. Trust is a practice, isn't it? That's what I think about trust. It's kind of like a practice. It's also a choice. We choose to trust. It's a choice and also it's a practice. This is what I feel about trust. And so maybe if it's our connection, like a heart connection, then it's like our heart gets stronger, You choose to trust and trust and trust and trust and trust. And then lo and behold, some of these things, maybe a lot of them turn out well. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in Bali with some really cool people. This is a really good reason. And if you could see him and her, you would see these are really, really three really, really good reasons to trust. because I used to be married and I used to be in a different reality, and I, like, all due respect to my ex, and it's not like, and I was trying to kind of like a little bit do a traditional role, but I'm not, like, what I've come to accept about myself is I'm not a traditional person, or conventional, or however the word would be to describe that. And I think it was confusing for both of us, you know? I was trying to be my mom or my grandma or like this whole line of ancestors. That's not me. It's how do we be who we truly are? And that what I've come to experience is, and just really, really, really staying true to that. I mean, I live a really super unconventional life, and I fucking love it there. That's my first fuck. I really, really fucking love it. It's like, seriously, and then you find yourself in Bali, and no, I don't have some 10-year plan or something. I'm following spirit. I'm not trying to, like, you know, find the, like, hidden safety net or something.
The spirit is your safety net.
Yeah.
Spirit is your safety net. The spirit is all of our safety nets.
Yeah.
So how did you first get initiated into talking with the Kontomble?
I would say the true initiation with that, with their voice coming through me, remembering how to speak in their tongue, is I would say the true initiation for that, it happened spontaneously in a sense. And I always heard about these Kontomble caves in Burkina, and the Kontomble caves. So okay, I don't know if you've heard about this yet with Malidoma, but he'll talk about gatekeepers. And gatekeepers, as he is defining it or articulating it, gatekeepers are like gay, lesbian, could be transgender, like gender fluid, bisexual, people that are born into the world with a particular vibratory field that enables them, especially, it gives them access to hidden dimensions, particular portals of the earth. There's Kontomble caves in Burkina where who would be able to access that dimension, I'm talking physically, would be specific gatekeepers, specific to be able to access that.
These are
not
literal
anybody.
caves. These
Actual
are literal caves.
Literal caves.
Uh-huh.
And actual, like, maybe if those two men died, maybe that cave couldn't be opened.
When you say opened, you mean
Yeah.
people could go into it, but you mean like the spiritual gate inside the cave can't be opened?
Yes.
Or just people are not allowed to go inside the
No,
cave
no,
at
no.
all?
I mean, there's actually a threshold space that I experienced because I did end up getting to go to those caves. I'm talking about a man being able to do, a gatekeeper being able to do an invocation, whistling and these utterances of words that's so powerful that a cave wall is able to crack open. That's what I'm talking about.
Or, wait a second. Okay. So
I'm saying actually.
So literally, there's a person, perhaps an LGBTQ person,
Yes.
who goes in, and any other person can go in and do the same whistles, and the cave will just be a cave.
The cave will be a cave.
But that particular gatekeeper can go in, do that,
Yes.
and then the cave will physically
Yes.
respond.
Yes, like cave
Holy
wall.
shit.
Cave wall like cracked open. Cave wall cracked open, and then this is interesting because I always thought, oh, it'd be so cool to, you know, meet the Kontomble in the flesh. This is amazing that this can happen in Burkina. Yes, there are places on the earth where things like this still happen because they choose if they're going to show themselves to us or not. It's up to them. And so anyway, so I'm in that cave, and for as long as I so wanted to go there, and I thought, hey, that would be like so amazing or so cool to experience that. When that moment was actually there, I was scared. I was really scared. And so I had my offerings, and it takes a certain amount of energy for him to be able to do that, and this like huge clack. And then, you know, all of us were like, you know, a little bit like, a little bit like, what the fuck just happened, you know? And then the gatekeeper is like, go, you know, go make your offerings. And so I had my offering, and when I got up enough courage to go in to make this offering to the Kontomble, I'm talking about a little person. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a little person.
A real little person.
Yes, that comes from the other dimension into this dimension physically. That's what I'm talking about. And so I got up enough courage to go and make the offering, which was a bottle of liquor.
Nice.
By the way, they do like liquor. They like spirits like spirits. True story. And so I go and I'm like shaking, you know, scared to like go and make the offering to the Kontomble, and they're talking in their tongue, and they're like, ah, piercing. And at that time, I didn't know how to understand them, so I'm just like, you know, shaking and going to give this bottle of liquor, and they just, their little hands came on, and they have the like powerful energy, and it's like, it just gets pulled in like a vacuum or something, and it scared the shit out of me.
I bet. Oh my god.
And so I'm like walking away, and I'm like in total shock. And then I go, and the African man that's also helping, that was there, the Burkina man, he sees me, and he just starts like cracking up laughing. And so I like go and I like sit down, and I'm like, oh fuck, what just happened? They came into the flesh, and then when the shuts, then they're back in their world. And after that, for like an hour, those of us that were there, we didn't talk. We were in shock. We were in complete shock, because all of that Western conditioning that was still in my being, and even though I felt, oh, I trust spirit, well, I mean, what do you do when you actually like, because that's all the conditioning, it says, you know, well, what we believe, like what you can see and touch, and that, it's like, no, it actually came in the flesh, and then it went into the other world. It just like shattered, you know. What happened after that was, I was just there in Burkina for 2 weeks during that trip, and then I went back to San Francisco. And then when I went back to San Francisco, I got really sick, and I was taking malaria meds, and then anyway, basically I got really sick, and I was in denial that I could possibly have malaria, and that was the last thing that I wanted to think was happening. And because I was so afraid of, like, I didn't have medical insurance, and I was afraid of how much it could cost at the hospital, I finally had to go. I was hoping it was like the flu or a fever or something like that, and then it was New Year's that I just was, I was really sick, and I was like vomiting all the time, and I was starting to like not be able to see well. And so my friend, she took me to the hospital, and I was having a hard time walking or seeing well, and could not stop vomiting. And then I was telling her, I felt like I was dying. I was dying. And I asked her to call my mom to tell her that I was dying, because I was dying. And I could feel death right there. And so she was saying, no, you can't ask me. And I'm like, I'm actually dying. I don't know how this is death right here. And so they did tests on me, and then they realized that like my whole system was like full of malaria, and that they were able to get a treatment in time, that I was like basically had a day to live. And I could feel it, and it was, the threshold was right there. And then during that time, and when I was vomiting, these like really weird sounds were coming out. They were like squeaky sounds or something.
From your throat.
Yeah, and so I could hear, and I could feel also the Kontomble so close, and I was asking them like, what is going on? And they were saying initiation. And I got really angry with them, because I had already been through like so many tests and so many initiations already, and I was like, how many fucking initiations do I have to go through, you know? I was pissed, you know? And then, but I was like in that fire, and then they were remaking me. And then obviously like I lived through it, you know. It was like a really slow healing process, but also I knew that they were, well, now I know that they were remaking me, and they were remaking me more in their likeness. And through that process, it was like a slow healing, but they were transforming me. And then what happened after that, slowly after that, was that when I would do my usual invocations where I'm like shaking the rattle and ringing the bells, then these squeaky sounds would start coming, or like squealy or squeaky sounds were starting to come through my voice, which it took like 6 months. And then they were like stretching out my vocal cords, and then it was this whole process of being able to remember their tongue. They're really tough teachers, you know. The Kontomble are really tough teachers, and so they want everything completely precise. And if when I was translating it with them, I would say something, a word's not right, they would say no, and I would try it again, and I would say, oh, this, And then they would say yes. They want it completely precise. So that was the actual initiation that enabled me to speak in their tongue or to remember their tongue. And
This language is not spoken by. This is like a spiritual language.
Yeah, it's I would say it's like a primal tongue. That's the way it feels to me, like a primal tongue. That to me, when I listen to their communication, it feels to me a little bit more like it would be like a sound of nature or something.
So how did you learn to translate? Is it that you hear them in your mind translating?
It would be like, because most of my stronger senses come through my feeling. And so I would feel it, and then I would think, oh, it feels like they're saying this. And then that's how I would come up with what I was saying back to them. Is this what you're saying? And then that's just how we got into a flow. And so by now, we just flow. And they're so, even sometimes if the way the translation comes through, or the way they're translating it to English, even if it sounds like a simple phrase, they're so specific about language. But I noticed too with them, when they send through these frequencies, even though it can sound like a simple phrase, it's multidimensional because they're multidimensional beings. And so it can be received by people multidimensionally. Like in a ceremony one time, they were going on this whole teaching about pray is play and play is pray, and they were like all playful that day. Sometimes they like to rhyme. And so they're like, pray is play and play is pray, and they're like having fun, but in a different moment too, with a different community of people. They'll come through like, it's definitely not love and light.
I was about to say, like...
Oh, no, hell no, it's not love and light.
Like so many people in the New Age community, they want everything to be like that.
Oh, they do.
But it's not at all.
Do you?
Like,
No, it's not, right?
Yeah, and to be honest, like, I'm literally afraid of a lot of these spirits, Like,
yeah, can we just talk about this?
Yes, please.
Like, no, it's not love and light.
It's not.
Yeah.
Like, these are massive energies. Totally. They're older than anything you can imagine.
Yeah.
Like, respect.
The Kontomble, like, they're not for the person that wants their, like, ego stroked.
Yeah.
They're not at all, because, I mean, and I told you too, like, I've come through conditioning of being like, I was raised as a people pleaser, like, they'll come through and they say things, I'm like, really? You want me to say that? I mean, really? They're like, say it! And that's my agreement to them. I'm going to say what, I'm like, fuck. And then they come in and it's very physical, and they come through and then they're saying what they say, and I'll experience people in a certain way and think, like, let's say, for example, a community of people that seem like, well, that's how they're presenting anyway, right?
Yeah.
And I'll, like, okay, I'm going to take your word for it. Like, all right, I'll take your word for it. I will, but they don't. And so they come in and they're just like, blah, 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 and saying these
calling
things.
Out people?
Well, they will, but they sometimes they're just like, okay, I'll give an example. Like I had a tree ceremony in the Pacific Northwest where it was like honoring, making way for grief for all the trees that have been massacred, basically, like the clear cuts, right? And they're starting out, and I'm behind a tree, so that's where I'm like, and then the community is on the other side, and the Kontomble come in there, and they were starting to like go off on this whole thing about like bombs in the belly or something, and they were talking about, and is it okay? Oh, because they're very provocative. They provoke. They'll like poke, and they'll provoke, and they keep poking at people's energy field, and they'll say, and is it okay for you that you're going to war with the world? And is it okay that your country is bombing Afghanistan? Is it okay that little children are dying? And is it okay? And they'll just poke and poke and poke. And I have no idea why they're saying this, and they're talking about like bombs in the belly. And I'm just over there, and I'm just like, fuck, they're really going for it, And then all of a sudden I'll hear people like, ah! And just like seemingly go crazy. And then they're like wailing and crying, and that was there to begin with. The Kontomble were trying to like expel the toxicity. That energy was already there. they're trying to like get it out of people's systems. It's like the toxicity of the matrix. They're literally trying to get it outside, and so they're saying this, and people will vomit. And so I'm like peeking around the tree while I'm running, like, oh fuck. And actually people will, and so because I've worked with them for this long, and they'll, it'll, if there's stuff in me too, it'll come out. And that's why, and some people will say, oh, this is like, oh, I get it, it's like shadow work that you're doing with them. Like, I guess, call it whatever you want to call it. They're basically like calling out what's there already, and they're just looking at it because they're looking at us energetically. And so they're just seeing it. And they're like, hey, do you want to talk about that pain? Do you want to talk about that thing that's already there? And just fucking just say it. That's more my my usual experience these days of connecting with them, and then experiencing. So no matter, like, if it's just it's not just the United States, it's traveling into other places and experiencing this too. And so seeing that, like, that illusion shatter, that illusion that we're trying to maintain, that is like, do we really want to keep maintaining the facade? Because we have a choice. And we know we do, like that facade, it takes a lot of energy every day. It's a little bit exhausting, maintaining the facade.
The thing that you went through for your initiation was a complete erasing of the facade of this is reality.
Totally.
But then there's little people that you actually physically saw from a crack in the cave. So this is all a facade, right?
Yeah,
the Kontomble
exactly.
are trying to be like super authentic.
Yes, yeah, total authentic. I know what you're talking. I just paused because I was getting chills. I was like,
Yeah, and authenticity is scary.
Like,
No, it's
I'm
scary.
Spirited people.
Yeah, I mean, but authenticity is super scary.
Why?
Because most people can't handle it.
Why?
I'm trying to figure that out because sometimes I can't handle it. Sometimes I feel that it's too real. There's something about the facade that's like processed food. It's easy to digest with just very little effort, but when it's real and when it's authentic, there's like the fibrousness of reality going through you.
I mean, I think it's nice to just ask these questions why too, because I think about this a lot, and I heard the Kontomble say one time that it's even a modern phenomenon that even like the word authentic, like think about that. They were saying like in the old days there would not be a word for authentic because why would you be anything other than authentic?
Why? Right.
I mean, this is a modern phenomenon that we do the facade. I mean, when I go and I spend time in villages all over the world, it's not like wow, these people are being so inauthentic. Do you know what I mean?
Just being themselves.
They're just being themselves. And so what's so frightening about just being ourselves?
The veneer of civilization. I think that's what it is. But what is civilization? It's oftentimes cruelty masked with a velvet glove, right?
Totally. And I was like super fascinated by what you were telling me also earlier. I don't know if we're recording already then, but I'm super fascinated hearing in Korea that like shamanism is just like kind of getting strong there. It's coming through strong, and you're saying that it's even like cool, to kids that like if their mother or something. Like to me, I'm like super fascinated. I'm like, it's where we're all headed. We've been trying to just be like, oh no, spirit's not real. No. But meanwhile, people are getting like mauled by entities. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they seep in and they come in through the cracks and they come in through our insecurities and everything, and then meanwhile other spirits are talking to us, and then we're so deeply conditioned to think that we're hearing voices. In this shifting time where I believe this like paradigm that we're coming into, that people can also get help, because I feel people also really need help with the entities that are also like wanting them to take their life. I see that happening a lot in the United States.
Do you physically see these entities, or is it like you're just walking on the street, like, I don't know, like in New York City or LA, and you'll see like certain entities
Somewhat,
attached?
yeah. Like it's not my strongest sense, but it'll come through like seeing, and I can sense them, like, because I've been tracking these energies for long enough and sensing and experiencing how they really, really can fracture the most well-intentioned community. They fracture. They, you know, make us feel, oh, we're different. Oh, I don't really understand you, or you don't really understand me. Oh, we're different. You know, they always want us to think we're different. And so it'll come in a little bit through seeing, feeling, you know. But then I'm like, that's what it is. It's an entity. And also because there are healers that I work with where I'm just constantly in the process of being cleared, also to try to make sure that I stay clear in myself. And I do that weekly. And I'll notice, like, let's say if I'm traveling through the United States, it's rare that I won't pick up something. It's amazing. So Bali is like such an amazing example of
They acknowledge
it,
acknowledge.
and it's like they're obviously in something that people might consider like a love and light energy, like super, super heart-centered and like beautiful, beautiful, like heart energy, real, authentic, and they're not denying that, you know, entities or demons or things like this exist. And, you know, so there are all sorts of reasons why I feel like it's really almost like crucial to bring more of the spirit-based conversation into the totality of even just like the wellness of a human being.
I totally agree. Like, I am a former atheist, like hardcore
Really?
skeptical atheist, like completely all about material science.
How long ago?
Until about 2.5 years ago.
Really?
So one of the reasons why I'm doing these videos is because
Wow.
thank you. I feel
2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago
amazing.
about I still struggle with it now. And I talk to people because I feel as though they are kind of like experts. You know, like I would read books when I was a skeptic, and I'd be like, this is Christopher Hitchens, this is, you know, Richard Dawkins. I'm looking through their expertise, and I'm trying to see the evidence they're putting forth. People that I talk to, like yourself, you're giving me the sort of, I guess, your experiences are helping me kind of see things and educate myself. But it's hard, I think, to live in the modern world and to still have that one foot in the spirit world. It's a hard balance. How do you do it?
Well, let's change it. That's what I'm working on. I'm not interested in conforming to this so-called culture that was designed in ways that squeezes out life force. That is squeezing out this person and this person and this person and this person and all the so-called others. However, that list of other is so long by now that the narrow bandwidth, how narrow that is of what is supposedly okay. I mean, you're suffocating yourself. And so I'm not interested in trying to squeeze myself into that. Like, that is a recipe for just angst. I'm not gonna, you know, try to talk somebody into believing that spirit is real. That would be a waste of my energy. I'm not interested in that. I am also interested in saying this is what I for myself know to be real, and there are so many of us that do. And we don't need to like get our information from the outside validated in order to know what we know. Direct experience is, why would that not be as real, if not more real, than what you could get from an outer source? Why is direct experience not enough? That's, I feel like, a decent question to ask.
Very decent question.
You know? So I'm more interested in feeding a different culture. I'm a little bit relentless about this because spirits that are with me, they're a little bit relentless about this, and that's why I'm just, at the risk of being a broken record, I'll just keep talking about spirit, you know, because it's showing, it helps other people come out. Within modern culture, I feel there is a dynamic conversation going on, and so I'm interested in just continuously adding spirit to that. Like, hey, what about spirit? Hey, oh yeah, remember your ancestors? Hey, I've been talking about this for 14 years, a little bit like a broken record, you know, which is fine. All those that are getting called to do that too, it is, I do see the shift happening.
I see it happening as well.